Before getting out of the car, the valet checked my reflection one last time and fixed the strap of my dress. He opened my door, and when I took his hand, I feigned a smile. It was a young night, and the hotel glistened in the warm glow of the chandeliers that spilled out from the glass panel doors. The atmosphere was charged with the kind of vitality that thrived on anticipation, ambition, and the subtly tense undercurrent of competition beside me. Noah silently adjusted his tie, his expression dejected, while individuals around us tried to outshine one another. I glanced at his face and reached for his hand, giving it a comforting squeeze. "It won't be that bad," I said, leaning in with a small, reassuring smile. "I'll make it up to you in a couple of hours." He grinned, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Noah wasn't made for these kinds of events. He hated the superficial banter, the clinking glasses of expensive wine, and the strain of feigning interest in conversations he'd no desire to be a part of. But I was different. This was my world. The energy of the room fed me in a way that was almost addictive. It was a game one. I had mastered a delicate dance of slightly angled compliments and carefully measured words, all to secure your opportunities. And tonight, it was crucial. My employer had hinted that a powerful client, one who could revolutionize my career, would be here. The ballroom was a spectacle of opulence. Golden chandeliers, cascaded light onto velvet drapes that pulled onto marble floors. Tables were adorned with lavish, floral arrangements and crystal glasses, but I barely stopped to admire it. I moved through the crowd with practiced ease. Noah trailing behind me like an anchor. Handshakes, smiles exchanged, business cards. I was in my element, feeling the rush of power and connection. Then I saw him, Zach. I hadn't thought about him in years, at least. That's what I had convinced myself. But there he was, standing with that same effortless confidence. His suit was impeccable, his eyes sharp. Seeing him here in the middle of my carefully curated world felt unreal. Then he smiled, a polite, distant smile, the kind that sliced through the noise of the room like a razor-sharp blade. "Camille," he said. I forced a soft laugh, perfecting my own carefully controlled reaction. "Wow, this is surprising." I wanted to believe the undercurrent in his voice was just my imagination, but if he knew something I didn't, it was there, a lingering familiarity, a hint of unfinished business before I even realized it. I had slipped into conversation with him, matching his energy, mirroring his posture, laughing at his words. It felt effortless. Then, for just a moment, I lost track of where I was. My gaze flickered toward the bar. Noah was there watching me, his glass untouched, his face unreadable. Zach's smile faltered for the briefest second, but he recovered quickly. Speaking in that same smooth, authoritative voice, something shifted in me. I excused myself and walked toward Noah, my heels clicking against them. Marble floor. "Is everything all right?" I asked. He met my eyes for a second before looking away. I knew him too well to believe his answer when he muttered, "Yeah, everything's fine," but there was something there. Not jealousy, no. Noah wasn't the type to play those games. It was something else. I turned once more, just in time, to see Zach watching us from across the room. The air between us felt heavier than before the night went on. But something had changed. A week passed. The networking event faded into the background of daily life. At least that's what I told myself. Noah and I slipped back into our usual routine, but there was an undercurrent of tension, like a thin layer of dust settling over something. Neither of us wanted to disturb Zach, didn't bring up our conversation, and Noah never asked about it. Then it began, with an email. At first I barely noticed the name in my inbox, but when I hovered over it, something in me hesitated. Subject: eager to collaborate. I clicked. "Looks like we'll be working closely on this project. I was pleased to learn you were assigned as the lead. Let's schedule a meeting as soon as possible. Looking forward to working with you, Zach." My heart pounded as I stared at the screen. This wasn't supposed to happen. My boss had mentioned a major client, but I hadn't realized it was him. I took a deep breath. "It's fine, it's just work." Ignored my shaking fingers as I typed out a professional yet poised response. "I'll coordinate with your team to set up a meeting. Looking forward to it as well, Camille." That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. Our first meeting was professional, straightforward. Zach was polished, charismatic, and entirely in control. But then came the late emails, the spontaneous calls, the brainstorming sessions that stretched longer The necessary. Zach was good at what he did, and I wanted to impress him, maybe to prove something to myself. Noah noticed. Every night he watched me with quiet, perceptive eyes. One evening he finally spoke. "You're home late?" I hesitated, setting down my coat. "Big project." His gaze flickered. "Zach's project." I hesitated again, then too quickly. "Yes." Noah nodded, slow and careful, "right?" His silence carried more weight than words ever could. I should have reassured him, should have shut the door completely, but I didn't. And that was the problem, because deep down a small part of me wasn't ready to, and I should have known that Noah had already started pulling. The way the signs were there, the way his silences stretched longer, the way he watched me waiting for confirmation of something he already suspected. Then one night I made a mistake, a single irreversible mistake, and it changed everything. "Can we talk about the third one?" I wasn't upset about. "The fourth," Noah replied. "I've never felt so small." I grabbed my keys and coat, walking out of the hotel. My feet led me to the only place that had ever felt safe, home. But when I got there, it wasn't mine anymore. Everything looked the same, yet felt like a stranger. Even the truck was parked in its usual spot. I knocked, no answer. I knocked again. Harder this time, still. Nothing. I reached for my key, convincing myself this was still my home, but when I tried to unlock the door, it wouldn't turn. The lock had been changed. My hands shook as realization hit. Noah had shut me out. I pounded on the door. "Noah, please, let's talk." My voice cracked, my eyes burned. Silence with nowhere else to go. I called my best friend, Lauren. She answered on the third ring. "Hey, are you okay?" I opened my mouth to say yes, to pretend I had this under control. But then my voice broke. Lauren sighed, not in anger, just resignation. I knew this would happen. She said softly, "You kept pushing him away." Tears burned behind my eyes. I hadn't thought he'd actually leave, but he had stayed at Lauren, feeling like a guest in someone else's home. Days passed. I called, texted, nothing. Then one morning an email arrived, hands shaking. I opened it. Legal documents. Noah had signed. It was over. No chances. I stared at the screen. The world around me collapsed. I had played a game, thinking I would win. But Noah had walked away from the table, and I was left with nothing. I told myself he'd miss me that own day. He'd reach out, but he never did. No angry texts, no late night calls, just silence, as if I had never existed. One night, I heard Lauren on the phone, her voice soft, measured. I didn't have to hear the words to know who she was talking to. When she came back, I swallowed hard and asked, "How is he?" She hesitated, then sat beside me. "He's moving." I nodded, pretending it didn't matter, but deep down I knew the truth. Noah wasn't the one holding me back. He had been my anchor, keeping me from drifting into nothing, and now I was completely alone. I hovered over his contact, fingers aching to type something. Finally I did. "I miss you," but before I hit send, I erased every letter. Time passed. Then one day I saw a photo. I wasn't meant to see Noah smiling. At a bar, a woman beside him. She laughed, her hand resting on his arm. It hit me like a punch to the gut. He was happy. Without me, desperation took over. I drove to our house. Lights were on. I gripped the wheel, my knuckles white through the window. I saw them sitting together, watching a movie, his arm draped over her shoulder. Peaceful, like I had never mattered. I knocked, footsteps, the door opened. Just enough for me to see his face. No anger, no relief, just exhaustion. "Noah, please," I whispered. He looked at me for a long moment, then exhaled. "Go home," and then he closed the door, this time for good.